Well, we are almost officially at 5:30 here, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Um, Robin, I will turn it over to you to get us introduced, and then I will teach all that I know in 1 hour or less.
Perfect. I think we're ready. Hello. Thank you for joining us for tonight's photography training, all about product photography and flat lays. My name is Robin Rosti, and my co-host is Jennifer Pinkerton, and together we make up Sage Media and Marketing. We are a boutique digital marketing agency, and we help with copywriting, design, digital strategy, marketing, and all that jazz. Our soft spot is for creative entrepreneurs. So if you are an artist, creative, or some sort of soul built in that way, we see you. So tonight we are going to talk all about flat lays because Jennifer is our product photography expert. She has been a professional photographer for more than a decade. She makes her day job living from weddings, lifestyle, portrait photography, branding photography, headshots, etc. But she also does a ton of product photography for blogs, websites, and lots of solopreneurs. So we are going to talk about flat lays because we think that you should be incorporating that into your small business as well, specifically for social media, but also for your website and other places, which we'll get into. So Jennifer, I would like to pass this over to you, but first I want to start with a question that we've got a couple times. When you registered, you might have recalled that we asked if you had any questions about photography in general. We got quite a few about backgrounds. So Jennifer, when taking product photographies or flat lay specifically, what would you recommend for a background?
Okay, I love this, that this is where we're going to start, but I'm going to back up just a little bit because I want to make sure that we understand that today I specifically am going to be interchanging flat lay and product photography. That does not mean that they are always the same or always different, but for our purposes here, I'm teaching how to take photos with your cell phone of an object. And sometimes that's going to mean styling a flat lay, and sometimes that's going to mean creating a photo opportunity for the product that you are trying to sell. So as far as like to start with the idea of what background to use, gives us an opportunity to talk about my favorite, number one, most revolutionizing tip for your product flat lay photography. That might sound like an exaggeration. It is not, because a foam board is going to take your photos from drab to fab. Sorry, that was a little cheesy. Okay, so, but the point is that all you need to do is go buy a foam board, and now buy two, because now you've created for yourself not only a clean white backdrop for your product photography, but also a reflector. See, now we have like great light on my under chin. And if you have a second one, which I'm just not going to try to finagle here in front of a camera, now you have a white clean backdrop. So you're creating a mini studio for yourself just by using foam boards. So that's going to be the easiest, the fastest way to create a backdrop that really lets your product shine, because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to create photos that will help your product, your service, your emotion, your whatever we're trying to do with the photo is going to not necessarily be about the backdrop. It's going to be about what is on the backdrop. So a white foam board is going to be a great base for all your photos. Now, you don't always have to use a white backdrop, and you can get creative and you can do other backdrops. I'm going to come back and answer that a little bit more in depth though after I show you my number 2 most important tip, and that is the lighting. Now, if you bear with me, I'm going to do my fancy little screen share. All right, so you should now be seeing a beautiful thank you note that I received in the mail. And it's on my white backdrop. So it should be a very clean, easy photo. And maybe you think, oh, that's a great photo. And it's not bad. But what I'm looking at is the double shadow, the 2-directional light that's actually 2 different colors. All right. So you see the blue light shadow and you see the orange light shadow. Now, in photography world, all light has a temperature. It's going to get warmer and it's going to get cooler. And when you're looking at a photo, you're always going to be noticing now, moving forward, you're going to be noticing what temperature the light is. And in this case, because we see 2 temperatures of light from the overhead light in my living room and the outdoor natural light from the window, it's a little distracting, it's a little unnecessary. So all you have to do, revolutionizing tip number 2, turn off the overhead light. Boom. Now you have a very soft lighting. You have no distracting shadows. You have no distraction of multiple color temperatures of light. All that I did to change the photo was turn off the overhead light. So still a clean white backdrop, very simple, very basic, but I turned off the overhead light, lost this awkward shadow, the distraction that is to the picture, turned it off, there it goes away. So when you are taking your photos, turn off the overhead light, stand set up near a window, and use a foam board as your backdrop. Now, you don't have to use a white backdrop. That's just a very fundamental way, a very simple way that you can change the way that your photos look. Because then now it doesn't matter where you are. You could be on the floor next to your sliding glass window, but you have a foam board and you have a big light source. So your photos, just by doing those 2 little tweaks, now you don't see the rug that's on the floor, you don't see the stain that's on the floor, you don't see the crumbs from dinner. All you see is the clean white backdrop and the clean light from only one direction. Now, I've just brain dumped quite a lot here. Might have gone a little bit fast, might have got a little bit excited about the way in which we can change the photos that we take just by turning off the overhead light and creating a clean backdrop. So I want to take a minute and just say, if you have specific questions, whether clarification or unrelated to what I'm saying at that moment, go ahead and be free to message Robin in the little chat option. And that way she can curate those and make sure that I have the opportunity to answer those along the way. So Robin, is there anything that's coming up already or anything that
there is an inquiry from your thank you card.
Okay.
Where were you standing when you took that picture, and how come your shadow wasn't there?
Ooh, this is an excellent question. Okay. If I had been thinking ahead like this, I would have stepped back and actually showed where this was. But I put my whiteboard on my end table, my living room furniture that was right next to the window and a little bit to the side of the window, so that the light was coming from the side from my overhead lamp. So there was one lamp coming one way, and then the window light was coming the other way. So there was no light behind me that would have been offering the shadow. So does that clarify, I hope?
I think so. So the light was coming from around, like in front or beside you.
Yes.
If the light was coming from behind you, that would have cast a shadow on your whiteboard.
Yes. So this also provides a very good opportunity to clarify that when you're using your big window light without the overhead light, with all the overhead lights turned off, you're facing the window as you're taking the photo down in front of you. And now the main light source is this big window that you're staring at. And so that there's not going to be opportunity for shadows to come in front of, to come behind you and mar your photo. Okay. So then this is assuming that you don't want to purchase additional lighting equipment. It is possible to do all of this with fake light as well. I call it fake light. It's still real light. But if you're wanting to get just like have a light source to not have to do all your photos during the day, or if you have a home that doesn't have even any natural light, I would say, first of all, that every home has a doorway or at least some sort of window. You don't need much, but you can purchase a ring light would be one option to create a larger source of light that creates that same diffused, soft, everlasting, evergreen, perpetual light in the same way that a large window would as well. So it is possible to create this light if you don't have the opportunity to shoot during the day. The bigger the light, the better. But the problem is the bigger it is, the more expensive it is. So if you do need to go that route, you'll have to buy more equipment. But that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about how to take amazing pictures with what you already have. And so far, I've asked you to spend $5 on foam boards. So I feel like we're doing pretty good. The other thing that is important when you're dealing with a flat lay is to understand that sometimes your camera distorts the image that you're taking unnecessarily. So I'm going to show you an example of this where all I was doing in taking this photo was the camera was tilted just, here, I'll show you. The camera was tilted just a little bit away from me. And I was kind of away from the book. Now, as we talked about last week, if you were around or if you watched the replay, the thing that's closest to the camera is going to look the largest. So hands large, hands appear small. You're seeing that with this book as well. So it's minor. It's not quite as pronounced as if my hands were moving along the screen, but you see how the edge closer to us is a little bit larger than away. And so then it loses the actual squareness of the image, which is just going to be unnecessary and distracting. Same thing here. I've overcompensated. Okay. So I was pointing the camera a little bit away from me. Now with this photo, I'm pointing the camera a little bit toward me. And either way, it's a way that you can take, I'm going to say it's sloppy. I'm opinionated. That you can up the ante a little bit by going directly down and being as square and parallel to the product as possible. But what you can also do to mitigate some of this distortion is portrait mode. Now, oh my goodness, why would we use portrait mode on your cell phone when you're not taking a portrait? Well, because it creates a blurry background in some circumstances, but that's not what we're doing for this. What we're doing is taking it from a wide angle camera lens that's going to distort the edges and make anything on the edge look bigger. And we're compressing the focal length, and we're using the tools that the camera on our cell phone offers us to minimize the distortion that's very very pronounced not in portrait mode. Okay, I sped through that. We still feeling good? Thumbs up, thumbs down, Robin. Okay, cool. Now, we've talked about light, we've talked about background, we've talked about portrait modes. Now let's get into the fun, the nitty-gritty, the actual styling of our pictures. And a little bit of creativity. All right, so here is an example of, okay. So I'm going to share this with you. All right. So I would like to point out, first of all, that I was creating these images using things that I literally could see in my living room while as a personal project, as a personal challenge to myself, is what can I create just with things that are laying around. And so the question I would ask myself about any photo that I'm taking is, what am I trying to emote or express? How is this photo telling the story that I want it to tell? And sometimes it's going to be a little harder to see that or to identify that. But in this case, I was mostly just going for a beautiful scene, but with a theme of correspondence, of writing, and pulling that together. Now, before we move on, I just want to show you, there is the overhead light doing its awkward shadow thing again. And you can see it even more dramatically because I've added the greenery and the pen, and now it's very distracting. And if you were trying to go for a dramatic photo, we could work with that light and the shadows, and maybe it would be something that at some point might be good. But all that I'm doing is turning off the overhead light and eliminating those distractions. All right, so what makes a flat lay work, or what makes it not work? And I would say that it comes down to basic composition principles. And what is your primary focus? Like what is your eye immediately drawn to? And how do the extra things in the photo draw our eyes to that thing that is the focus? In this case, the beauty of this crafted thank you card is my focal point. It's what I'm wanting us to look at. And the lines of the greenery, the lines of the pen are all creating this circular-ish, if we all want to go back to our geometry, that it's coming down to, I'm looking at the thank you, the words, the lettering of the card. But also, okay, so this is not the example I wanted to go to next. I apologize. Now you're seeing all the things ahead of us. Oh no. Okay. So here we go. Again, we have the extra things in the picture that are all creating a visual backdrop for the focal point, which in this case is the book. All right. And I would point out here that we are using the basic photography principle of of the rule of thirds. So if you were to divide this image into thirds, you'd have one line here, one line here. I think you can see my mouse. I hope you can see my mouse. Okay. And then you'd have a third here and a third here. And what we're seeing is that you see that the gloves are in the left third area, so that is one element of the composition. The leaves are primarily in the right third, and the burlap is in the bottom third. And so where that leads us is to the book that's right smack in the center of the image. So if you're putting things into the composition on the thirds, or being aware that those intersecting lines are going to be the important part of the image. It's going to help you cut through the buzz of having to always, okay, well, what else goes in this picture? How do I do this? What do I do next? And it's still, and I would say that no matter how adept you are at styling a flat lay, you're always going to end up with a little element of trial and error. But a photo that works is going to involve a understanding of the rule of thirds, so that you're not putting the most important thing in the bottom, the outside, but that it's keeping us focused on the thirds here. Okay, brain stop here.
Can I interrupt you for a moment?
Yes.
We have a couple questions just about like how close you are to the scene there, and like, were you using like a zoom, or are you just getting really close, or how does that work?
Okay, good. So in this case, I'm pretty sure I was in portrait mode, so that I'm not, again, it's zooming without zooming, where it's just, this is where my creative side needs to be a little bit more technical. But instead of having a 24 millimeter lens that shows you everything, because this is going all, like, I don't need all the edges of the picture. Okay. So I'm just letting the portrait mode, which I'm going to go with turns into like a 50 millimeter zoom focal length lens. I'm using photography terms that don't necessarily translate to the camera that we're on our cell phone, but hopefully it can at least put a label on what's going on. So in this case, I'm right over it, and I'm filling the frame. There is no actual zoom. In general, I don't want to use the zoom on my camera. I want to move the camera instead of moving, I would say move my feet if I were taking a portrait, but I'm moving the camera closer so that it's getting exactly what I want in the frame. So in this case, I'm probably, I don't know, 12 or 18 inches off the whiteboard. Maybe a solid 18 inches, because if I'm in portrait mode, it's cutting off a little bit. So I'm not using the zoom because I don't need to. I'm just moving the camera a little bit closer. But I am using the portrait mode because I don't need the distortion that it comes with the wider angle lens. And so the portrait is just giving me a soft zoom, but not actually zooming. Making sense? Kind of, sort of, not really. Okay.
Yeah, I got another question for you if you want.
Okay.
We're wondering too if there's a general rule for how many props to use, and are they gonna ever distract from the focus of your flat lay?
Okay. You don't want to distract. It's true. So I have an example that shows that it. So let me back up. It's about, we want to remember what the purpose is of the photo when we are considering the props. Because in some instances, so like on a Instagram feed or any sort of social media, Pinterest, sometimes if you have layer upon layer upon layer of prop, it creates a very visually appealing photo so that your eyes go exactly where you want it to go. It's what the color, the vibrancy, the layers of texture is going to be what creates the click. It's going to be why someone reads the caption, pins it to their Pinterest board, whatever. In other cases, the simple image is going to be the better image. And to know the answer to that question is going to be about knowing what your brand is, and what is, and more importantly, who is your target audience? Who is your customer? Who are you trying to appeal to and attract? Because so as a wedding photographer, when I'm styling my flatlays, I know of the details, the paper suites, the flowers, the shoes, like putting all of the creative energy of the bride into one photo. I know that my target customer in that moment is partially the bride who wants to see that image of all of her hard work, all the decisions that she made in one creative, aesthetically appealing, beautiful image. But the other customer that I'm trying to attract is the next bride, the person that's going to see this image on Pinterest and be inspired by it and look at all the colors and the textures and want to pin it to their board to be like, that is the wedding that I want to create. And so for a wedding, I'm pouring as many details into that and props into that one photo flat lay, because that is what my customer wants. For a social media feed whose purpose is primarily the caption, the words, I would want to focus on less props and more intentional props. More, how can I make sure that the true star of the show, the book, the cup of coffee, the bar of soap, the whatever that star of the show is, how can I make sure that star of the show is the star of the show? So when you're trying to decide how many props and styling pieces to include, it's going to depend on the purpose of the photo and the person that you're trying to talk to. Yes.
Okay, follow-up question.
Okay.
We have inquisitive minds and they must know. Okay, so is there like a rule of thirds we need to use with all the props too? Like, do we need to make sure they're on, yeah, like, I don't really know how to phrase it, but basically, are there more rules we need to think about?
Okay, so I'm gonna come around and answer that question in a moment. I'm gonna start by talking about the picture that I was about to show you. Okay, but hold me to this, keep me accountable. I'm coming there. So if I am talking about props, it doesn't have to be too dramatic. You don't have to overthink it. You don't need to necessarily go out and buy a whole bunch of things to make your photos pop, because again, purpose. Okay, so in this case, I'm assuming that my purpose is that I'm writing a book review for this book, and I really just want the focus of this image to be the book. So I don't need to spend a lot of time or effort bringing in a lot of props, bringing in a lot of color, or bringing a lot of like extraneous, unnecessary clutter, when all I really need to do is bring in some color, bring in a piece that might make that will help the photo stand out and not just be a photoshopped image of the book that I got on Amazon, right? So how can I do that? String. I mean, it sounds so maybe foolishly simple, but it's color and it's on the third, okay? And the primary focus is in the center third. Now, in general, I probably would not say that the primary focus of, if I were talking to someone about portrait photography or landscape photography, I wouldn't say put the focus of the photo in the center third. However, because you're often talking about a very small grid, a very small square, you really want the photo to pop. You really want it to do exactly what you want to do very quickly. And the fastest way to do that is to keep the main thing the main thing. So keep it in the center. Now, book. Again, these are just books I had around my living room and items that I found around my living room. So in this case, I'm just trying to create some intrigue and question, like, why binoculars? What's going on with the binoculars? What's the book? Well, maybe you can understand that like a binoculars could be a wildlife watching. I have eagles that I watch from my living room window. Activity that can be bonding between dad and daughters. Okay, so that might be like a little bit too much of a stretch, or it might be what's in the caption. But it doesn't take much to set a photo apart and be like, oh, okay, this is something I want to know. Like, why are there binoculars in this photo? Again, main focus, center. Okay. Now, this is not where I wanted to go. All right. Now, I'm going to go one more because here I have my white backdrop, a colored piece of cloth, the postcards, and the sunglasses. All right. There's a lot of things going on here, but the main thing is still the main thing, right smack in the center. We know we're talking about Puerto Rico. We have so like the sunglasses are on the intersection of two lines of thirds. You have the line of the cloth behind, and the line of the sunglasses are kind of drawing your eye down to the postcard. So this is a little bit more of an abstract. We're trying to make it look like I effortlessly threw these postcards down and created a visually appealing moment. This was not effortless. I had to sit and like fiddle with the postcards multiple times and fiddle with the sunglasses and figure out where the cloth should go. I mean, like I have, like, these are the exact same elements, but different places, different positionings. I think I have one more. Okay. So this showcases this trial and error, this experimentation. I think there's one more, maybe? Nope, not one more. That I encourage you is not something to be scared of. And in fact, is where the creativity and the lack of rules of this comes to play. Because I think it is it's more possible to over prop. Is that right? It's more possible to have too many props than it is to have too few props. But by experimentation, by playing, by letting the creative process flow and using these rules or these ideas, these suggestions. What is the main thing? Is it the primary focus? Is that what my eye is drawn to? The idea of leading lines. Where are the lines pointing in the image? And the idea of the rule of thirds. Am I keeping these things in mind and styling a photo that reflects the beauty of what I'm trying to do? So there is no rule, I don't think. It's about knowing the purpose and knowing the guidelines so that you can break the rules, which I know is not pleasant because it would be much easier to say, I like ABC, here's what you're doing, here's how to do it, you're done. But the creativity is what makes it work. Okay. How are we doing? Making sense? Overwhelming? Totally confusing?
Yeah, I think, okay, so maybe you can talk a little bit about why you'd use this type of this type of photography in your social media for your business. I mean, you touched a little bit about branding, and how you can bring your personality and your brand into this. Did you have anything more to add? I'm thinking particularly about, let's say you're not selling a specific product. What would you use this type of photography for?
Okay, so if we're specifically thinking for social media, because that's that would be the primary way in which you need photos that aren't necessarily, sorry, there's apparently a thunderstorm going on outside my house, and I'm hoping that my power doesn't go out, so this will be fun. Okay, so social media is going to be the primary use if you're not trying to sell a product, because it's very easy to say, I'm trying to sell the craft that I made. That's what I'm trying to focus on. That's what my goal is. That's what my product is. Like, that is what's going to be in the photo. Okay. So easy. I mean, not easy, but like, at least it's straightforward. When you're trying to sell an emotion, a relationship, a idea, suddenly we take a creative abstract concept and whoa, now it's completely abstract, it's completely creative, and it is going to become even more overwhelming, I'm sorry to say. So if you're not selling a product, that is what you are, like, your social media is going to be about fostering relationship with your target audience. It's going to be about creating confidence in your authority, in your service, and photos can do that by emoting, by giving the idea, the essence. So maybe a photo that you would take is, okay, let's talk about like the postcards. Well, I'm not selling the postcards, but I can be talking about travel in this photo. I can be talking about summer with this photo. I can be talking about family time with this photo. I could be talking about the history of the postcards. I can talk about the postcards collection that it came from. So it's finding, like, if you're not actually selling a product, what are you talking about in your social media? What is the content of your social media, and what photos can add to that or reflect that in maybe a less concrete way than I'm selling the sunglasses, because I'm not selling the sunglasses. Is that making sense? And I guess more specifically, maybe this is an opportunity to say that this is why stock photos are a thing, that you can simply like scroll through someone else's photos, decide the ones that fit what you're trying to talk about, and then just download them and use them without actually having to take them yourself. So as a plug, like, that is something that I do. I create stock images, whether custom or part of my repository, for entrepreneurs who don't want to think about, oh, I have to take a picture to talk about the great service that I offer. They just want to be able to go get a picture of scenery, or they want to go get a picture of a steaming cup of coffee, like that. And that is an option. So if you're trying to, if you get too stuck in taking your own photos, finding photos online is always an option. Just make sure to do so legally and don't steal someone else's pictures.
Yeah, and really we should mention that Jennifer, many of you have taken advantage of Jennifer's offer of free stock photos from sagemediamarketing.com. If you haven't yet, you're just here for this training and you don't really know Sage at all, then please head over to sagemediamarketing.com and grab 10 free stock photos that Jennifer has taken. A lot of them are Flatlays.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure. I can't remember all of them, but I think that a lot of them are Flatlays.
Yep. I think this batch, there's definitely at least half of them that are Flatlays. maybe more. Okay. So I say that to say that sometimes you don't need to take your own photos, and be free in that. Like, you don't have to feel embarrassed if you're not taking your own photos. Now, if you're making it seem like you took your own photos, if you're showing pictures of I don't know, of a beautiful tropical vacation, and you never went on a beautiful tropical vacation, that might be misleading and deceptive, and don't do that. But we all drink some version of coffee or tea, I'm presuming. So having a picture of coffee or tea that someone else took is just smart delegation. All right. So where are we at? What notes have I not covered yet? And what questions have I not answered? Oh, we have not talked yet about the other options for backgrounds. So this one, I kind of cheated a little bit, because that is this picture that's right behind me that happens to be on a foam board that I was able to use as the backdrop for this photo, because it's just a texture that is water, and Puerto Rico beaches are water, right? So it's still an intentional background, but it's not a whiteboard. In this case, I have just lace curtains that I have as part of my prop stash that I was able to put down and create a backdrop. And I guess I will also just reference that as you're taking more photos, as you have product to showcase in photo, having a stash of props that's in your like prop box makes the whole process so much easier. Because now, instead of like, oh no, what props do I use? You've collected over the years or over the months at the thrift store, or at the dollar store, or on Facebook Marketplace, whatever you're doing, you're collecting these things that fit your brand, fit your aesthetic. And now when you know that you need to take a picture of the art you just made, or of this book that you're reviewing, or incorporating a color that you're trying to incorporate, you already have the box set aside in your closet, ready to go. And this might be colors, it might be textures, it might be greenery, it might be cloth, it might be ribbon, lots of ribbon, all the different colors of ribbon. And then it might be really random things that I've accumulated, like pine cones and vases, and like all these different pieces that if it's all in one box, you don't have to think about it. You just have to grab the box. So
we do have another question.
Okay.
When you're doing your background, taking your photo, how do you create like really unique photos when you're taking a picture of the same thing over and over? Like you showed us, yeah, like a few examples of the same photo, but they all look different. How do you do that?
Yeah. So we can take it from two different angles. One is like having the same backdrop, and by backdrop I mean like the scene, which in this case is the burlap and the greenery. All right. So now I've created this scene. All I would have to do is insert the pruning fork, insert the seed packet, insert the, what else is kind of gardening-ish related? The gloves, the book, now I've created 6 or 7 pictures with the same scene by just replacing one item. Okay. So that's one way to look at it. The other way is to, and it depends on how similar or different you need the photos to be, but if you're always taking a photo of a book over and over again, reviewing a book, you might simply incorporate a different color ribbon, a different color paper, a color block of paper, as I've done with the burlap here, could be a very easy swap it out, and now you've created a grid for your social media that you always are coming back and you know, like, this is the pink book, this is the blue book, this is the red book. Or what's outside. Like if you're taking the same picture of what else would it be, like a product, like a pair of earrings. If you're photographing the earrings that you made over and over and over again, well, one day it might be twigs that you find outside. The next day it might be the vivid orange leaves that have fallen off the tree. One day it might be the pile of rocks, like the green leaves from spring, the flowers from your yard. Putting an item in is going to change the photo, even if it's the same thing over and over again, without changing much of the rest of the scene. And I guess I can show you, like, so it's very similar. 1, 2, 3. I wouldn't put these pictures right next to each other on a grid, but if I'm putting them on every like 10 images, so that you're never actually seeing them on the grid at the same time, they look like different pictures, but they have similar components. Any other questions?
Yeah, I've got.
The questions are amazing, and so I'm not even like going back to my notes anymore. Because
yeah, thank you everyone for being so questiony. I have 2 more lined up, but if anyone has more questions, please drop them in the chat that chat box. First one is, okay, so we talked about a $5 foam board. We talked about foraging basically outside to find stuff. Is there any, and using our phone that we already own, is there any other equipment? I guess you said the ring light, but would that be like if you're shooting at night? Could you is there a certain time of day you'd recommend doing your photos at, or is there any other equipment that you'd recommend us getting for these?
I mean, the specifics of your needs are going to be dependent on what props you need. So like, I can't give you a prop shopping list, unfortunately, because that's the creative process, and we've already talked about all the elements that go into that. However, the ring light is bonus. The ring light is specifically if you don't have a good window, or if you know that you're going to be shooting at night. Beyond that, no, just have your phone. Have your phone and your phone boards and your window, and that's really all that you need. It's as simple as that.
Is there ever a situation where you would say it's okay to use a different color other than white for your foam board?
Oh, absolutely. The white I like, because then I can build on top of it with fabric or paper or props. And because by using 2 foam boards, now if I need to, like, so we've talked a lot about flat lays, and so you're shooting down, but if I needed to shoot into the other white foam board, it doesn't matter whether there's a bookshelf behind it or dirty dishes piling up, or like, it doesn't matter what's behind it because you're looking at the white of the foam board. So I like that. However, if your brand is black, have black foam boards. If your brand colors and your target, again, it comes back to your target customer, about your business aesthetic. What works for you might be the red board. It might be the black one. And the more colorful that you get, you're going to end up with other challenges along the way, where a red, for example, if you ended up putting that in direct sunshine, it's going to reflect red up onto whatever you're photographing. So if I put this white cup onto a red foam board, the red will come onto the side a little bit, just because that's the way light and color works that way. But that's not a bad thing. It's just something to be aware of when you are making these decisions.
Great.
So those were your two questions?
Yeah, those are my questions. So I think, yeah, unless you had anything else to add here.
The only other thing that I want to say, and I did just take a peek at my notes, is that you will have to be aware of reflections in some products. So if you're trying to photograph a piece of art or something that's in glass or a framed photo, the reflection from the window might be something that you're competing with. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just going to be something that you will need to be aware of and adjust accordingly. Maybe move a little bit away from the window. Maybe move a little bit toward the window. And similarly, if this is actually a very important piece that I forgot, you want your foam board to be at the same, for Flatlay, to be at the same level as the bottom of the window. Because if you have a window that's hip height and you put the foam board on the ground next to the window, the light coming in the window is going to completely bypass the foam board. How do I describe that? How do I explain this? There's going to be a shadow that you might not necessarily see or notice at first. If you don't have no matter how great the window is, just watch for shadows. That was getting confusing. I'm sorry.
As long as we keep our foam board at the bottom of the window,
then you
we're
won't
good.
worry
We don't
about
have to understand why it works.
No.
It just works.
No, exactly.
I will file that away. Thank you.
Oh boy. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So, Jennifer, I really thank you for pouring out your knowledge here. I know this is a very technical seminar, so it's not been easy for you to unload like why it works or why you like it or why you don't. So yeah, thank you for just walking us through that. I know I never know why something's good, and so I feel like I have a few more tools now. One of the reasons that we're having this tonight is because Jennifer has actually filmed a photography course, how to take excellent photos with your phone. And we are putting it on super sale on Black Friday. And so I want to take just a moment now, Jennifer, if you don't mind, just unpacking a little bit about what else you'll cover in that course aside from Flatlays.
Yeah. So I start with how to use your smartphone to its full capacity, like how to be smarter than your cell phone, and very practical tips that we did not get into today about the mechanics, the technical of your phone. We then talk about composition, we talk about lighting, we talk about what works, we talk about what doesn't work in landscape photography, in portrait photography, in self-portrait photography. So my goal is a comprehensive look at smartphone photography that touches, yes, on Flatlays, but also gives you the tools that you need to really do Flatlays well, to really do portraits well, to really take great travel photos well, all with your smartphone. Because I believe that we have the luxury of having an excellent camera at our fingertips all the time. And we just need to know how to use it well. And the best I can describe is that I am a professional photographer who traveled Europe last year without my big camera. And so my cell phone and I took the photos from my trip on these, like, this once in a lifetime experience. I just took my cell phone. So I really believe that anybody can do that, and it's not just me, a professional. So that's where we did the course, and you can't afford not to on Black Friday. So mark your calendars.
Yeah, and we'll be announcing more as we get closer to the date. But next week, we'll be doing another free training, and we're going to be talking about photo management, which sounds boring, but I think it's probably the most important thing that you could know how to do. So yeah, can you give us a little preview of what to expect next week?
Yeah, so because the phones are our cameras and we can take photos all day, every day, we end up taking a lot of photos. But if you don't know how to access those photos, if you can't go back and find the photo again, what's the point? Like, why did you take that picture if you can't find it when you want to see it again in a month or a year or 10 years? And so I want to really be able to unpack some of the systems that I use as a professional photographer. Like, photos are my entire life. I take thousands of photos a week. And so, how do I always know exactly where those photos are? And how can I make sure that I always know where to find the photo that I took? I feel like I've learned a couple things in a decade of doing this. And so I want to be able to unpack that and give you all the tips that I can to make that mayhem a little less crazy and a little more organized.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to you teaching me how to save my photos other than just like month and year that I took it, because I feel like it doesn't really work.
No, it really doesn't. I feel sorry for you. We can help this.
Great. Well, yeah, thank you again. I'm personally looking forward to next week, and so I hope that you all can join us again. I'm really grateful for all of you who joined us live, and thank you for your great questions. This really helps keep this moving, and yeah, it helps Jennifer know where the questions are at, because I'm sure, yeah, there's a lot we could have covered. So yeah, I'm glad that we hopefully answered a few burning questions, and we'll be wanting to see your Flatlays this week on social media.
Yes, please. All right, guys. Have a wonderful rest of your night. Thank you so much. And feel free, if you have specific questions, to email as well. But that's all for now.